feel like my hair is just all over the place at this moment, but at this rate, it's going to be what it's going to be. Also, I do need to make room for the book cover. But hello, welcome. It's another day. Today is what, the 11th? It's the 12th. We're already 12 days into December. Where is the time going? Where is it going? So shout out to Erin from Booked and Busy, because without her, I probably would not have finished Normal People as early today as I did, because we did some impromptu sprinting. And so I was able to get from 14% where I was yesterday around, like, what was that? I want to say I filmed that around noon, because that's when the mail came. So that's when I had started Normal People and decided I was going to do a Sally Rooney moment. So I got from 14% to 90% on the sprints with her last night, and then I listened to the last 15 minutes of the audiobook. I think it was technically 45, but listening at 3 times speed, which I was surprised I was able to do, because the narrator does have an accent, but for whatever reason, it was able to be sped up and still understandable. So shout out to them. I listened to the last 50 minutes this morning while I was making my, technically, it was my breakfast, but it was kind of closer. It was not close to a lunchtime, because right now it's only 10:18. So that would have been a lie. But that's going to be a breakfast and my lunch, because I'm probably not going to eat till I get home from work later on tonight. So while I was doing that, I listened to the last little bit of Normal People by Sally Rooney. And first things first, y'all are messy because yesterday's little daily update has significantly more views in the first 24 hours than the other ones. So y'all are here for mess and drama, which, as someone who, told you guys that I read books for the mess, I can't really be upset. My audience knows me. I know my audience. Y'all really did that. I love that for y'all. Also, so many people have the same bookish pet peeve, which I'm assuming is when the booktubers hold it like this. When they hold up the books like this and you can't see what the book is. Now, I don't hold up books anymore because at this rate, I read so many audiobooks. I need to get into my spreadsheet. That's what I really need to do. I have tomorrow off as well. So in addition to reading the Colleen Hoover that I've been putting off for forever at this rate, I also need to update my spreadsheet so I can have actual factual statistics for my end of the year videos. And I just know that my audiobook reading has surpassed. Okay, it's above and beyond my physical reading this year. I just have not had the time, the energy, the desire, honestly, to read a physical book. So holding a book is not an issue, but that's the main reason that I blur the books in the background of all my videos, in the thumbnail, just so it's kind of a, ooh, what is it? What did he read? Moment. But so many of y'all they hate this. So that's been entertaining for me to read the past couple of hours. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be better about getting back in the comments and answering people, because I do have a little bit of free time. I could respond. So I've been reading every comment always, but I'm trying to be better about actually getting back in there and saying, things in response. So that was yesterday's video. Today, the only hot take that I have to offer, eventually, I promise, I will talk about Normal People, but I know that I don't have a lot to talk about today, so I'm trying to just get it all out there. So this got brought up last night in the reading sprints, and I figured that even though it was in those reading sprints and I've already talked about it on Twitter and I've, tweeted it, I do think that more people at this rate, again, we are 12 days in December. I understand that Goodreads is out here telling some of you that you are behind on your goal. Okay, that you're behind by 3 books, 5 books, 57 books. I don't know how ambitious you were. And I think that we really need to have a firm conversation, not a firm conversation, but a realistic conversation, right? About setting yourself up for success and being okay with failure. There are 2 kinds of people, I think, that make Goodreads goals. One group of people, they said it's just something that they realistically understand that they can achieve. I myself, I put it at a single book, because to me, a single book is doable. I am never going to be the person, I've learned this over the years, particularly the last couple of years, that I'm never going to be a person that can read a book every single day. There are days that I do not read a book, and I am, at this point in my life, mostly okay with that. I am mostly okay with that. The only time that I'm not okay with that is when I am in the middle of a reading project and I would like the project to be done. I would like to be able to get that video out because I'm excited for that project to see the light of day. And for whatever reason, I've imposed an artificial deadline on myself. And so I have created an environment, I like to think, where I don't have to read every day. It's not necessary for me to read every day. And so I just don't read every day. There are sometimes days where I don't read. There have been fewer of them this year just because I have been daily vlogging or daily updating people for 6 months now. Like, I've already done it 5 times. This is the sixth time. Like, being in front of a camera every day for the stretch of an entire month where your entire purpose is to discuss the books does kind of make you read in situations where you would not want to read. So this year I've definitely had, you know, more days in a row where I am reading opposed to days in a row where I am not reading. But that also meant that in the off months, I just luxuriate in the idea of not touching a book, of just laying down, of watching a movie, of watching a show on Netflix. Well, not Netflix. I don't really subscribe to Netflix, but on any of the other streaming platforms I'm subscribed to, watching something there and just not reading. So my reading goal was built into that. You know, like, my goal of one book is very easy for me to do. I hit it on January 1st and I never look at it again. Goodreads is never out here trying to give me the Goodreads, the little update. I don't know what they do on Storygraph. I don't know if they give you positive reinforcement. I don't know what's happening over there, but this is in relation to the Goodreads reading challenge. It's not like they're giving you positive reinforcement. It's negative reinforcement. So not only are you, actually creating a challenge for yourself, now I want you to think, does negative reinforcement work for me? Is a website on the internet telling me, that's redundant, but is a random website telling me that I'm behind, that I'm a failure, going to motivate me to read a book? Because if that's not going to do that, then setting the challenge for something that is actually a challenge might not be beneficial to you. You might be better off setting your challenge in your bullet journal, in your notes app, just in a countdown, like literally somewhere that is not Goodreads, where you can still see that you are not where you would like to be, but you are not going to get every time you log in to log a book, to mark off a book, to check off a box, to fill in however you're going to do the tracker. You're not going to see a negative message saying you're behind, you're failing, you're failing, you're failing. You can just see that, the boxes aren't as full as you would like them to be, but there's no like actual mathematical percentage they're telling you how far behind you are. So maybe that's something to think about. So those are one group of people who actually want to challenge and people who don't. And honestly, I think you are better off just putting it in a place where you can hit it. Because then we come to the part of the other booktube pet peeve that I have is people complaining, not even complaining, but the people who are out here pushing the small books, the novellas, the short things that you're meant to speed through to be able to catch up. So now you're playing catch up. So I have to see the catch up content, the catch up vlogs, trying to catch up to my Goodreads goal. That content also bothersome. Not for me. It doesn't move my spirit in the right way. And I also think that some of that content, the discourse around like, are you retaining any of the books is always going to happen. And as someone who has admittedly told you guys that I have the memory of a goldfish, I reread Yellowface just this month because I told you guys I wanted to put that on my best books of the year list. And I wasn't sure I could do that because I read that book literally a year ago. It was my first book of the year. How was I supposed to have remembered anything that happened in that book 12 months later? So this isn't, me, casting shame. I do think that the discourse is going to discourse regardless. But I do think that, if there's a whole month of the year that is sort of dedicated to, I say a month, but to like a whole season, like starting in October, I think the people who are really behind, they really try to get a jump on it. And even so much like in July, people will really start taking that mid-year and they start reevaluating, they start looking and they're like, oh, I am behind. So, but there are like months of the year, but really I'll say just December, dedicated to people trying to just like speed through things, just reading for the sake of reading. And listen, far be it for me to tell you guys what to do with your life, okay? Far be it for me to sort of prescribe how anybody should be consuming books. If you want to read books just to hit an arbitrary number, you do what you want to do, okay? I'm not saying that everyone should retain information from books that they read. But at that point, I think that if you were reading things just to read things, I do think that's where we start having the other conversation about being comfortable with failure. And I say that in the sense that failing your Goodreads challenge is not going to have external life ramifications. Now, maybe you've set it up to where like if you hit your Goodreads challenge, you get to do something, there's a reward in it that you have created for yourself. And so maybe you lose out on that reward. But what I'm saying is, in life, if you fail like a college course or you fail at something at your job, there could be something that is actually negatively that happens negative as a result from that. Like maybe, you don't have to go back for the next semester, or you have to do over a semester, or maybe the mistake that you made at work that you failed at was so catastrophic that you actually lose your job. So like there are positions, like there are things that happen in life where you fail and there can actually be harmful repercussions from that failure. Not filling in a status bar on Goodreads is not going to impact your life. I mean, again, psychologically, mentally speaking, like maybe it really will damage something inside you. You'll feel not your best self or something like, and that's not to diminish any of that. But at the same time, like I feel like those are things that we can move on from. Like we can recover from that. We can take time to be sad and be like, I really worked hard on this and I just didn't hit it this time. And then we adjust. And this is where I think the first part of the conversation, setting yourself up for success. Again, life is going to throw you curveballs, but I think you kind of understand that if you're a person who reads 25 books a year, you can realistically get through 2 books a month. And so 24 might be, so instead of like doing 24, you do 25. Like maybe that really was a nice little stretch goal. But if you are someone who can get through 2 books a month and your goal was 75 books, again, like let's have a conversation with ourselves. Let's have a conversation. Let's sit down. Let's readjust expectations. Let's be okay with failing this. This is something that we should have foreseen. We should have foreseen that we get through 2 books a month. I don't read a lot of short things. I don't bust through comic books. I'm not a graphic person. I don't like poetry. There aren't short fiction things that I'm gonna get through. Again, let's reassess. Let's reassess it. I don't know, but that's that aside. The actual reading update for today. Normal People, Sally Rooney. I have seen this book floating around since it probably came out. It's one of those darling books of the internet intellectual era that the girlies read it. Sally Rooney becomes her entire personality. And I am not one of those people. Sally Rooney is not my entire personality. But I do think this was a very interesting book. In some ways, it does kind of like shift how I viewed some books that I read last year. Like it kind of shifts how I viewed Frankenstein and Cleopatra, or Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I think it was Cleopatra and Frank. In that I feel like part of me wants to say that Cleo and Frank was trying to go for something Normal People-esque, because neither one of these books I would feel are really that deep. They are very surface and very shallow, but there's something about Normal People that worked for me in ways that didn't work for me when I was reading Cleo and Frank. And again, Sally Rooney is not like my new favorite, but there was, I don't know, it was very interesting. I think it just worked because Marianne, she's a little cracked. I do also think that it's easier. What was I saying? Cleo and Frank is a little bit deeper. I think it's still very shallow, but Normal People, I think, is so shallow, and I feel like it allows you. Normal People feels like a book that was written to have high schoolers examine it. I feel like that's what it was. I think that's really what I think, that Normal People exist in this space that allows you to kind of project your meaning onto the book in a way that can deepen it. And there's nothing really in the text to say that you're wrong, really, because the text is so ephemeral almost. It is a book that I'm a little surprised to see have an adaptation, just because, like, what are we... Not surprised to have an adaptation. I think I'm surprised that the adaptation was televised and it wasn't a movie, because I feel like the scope of this book is so small that doing this episodically would not be interesting. Although maybe they're like 30-minute episodes, in which case I can kind of see it, because a full hour of television, I think you would only get like 3 episodes, which I guess, they are European. Europeans are not opposed to a 3-hour season of television, but to me, I don't care that we're in the streaming era and nothing is ever going over 13 episodes. To me, a season, we still minimum 18 season, like 18 episodes, and there's no way you get 18 episodes that are Normal People. But here we're following Marianne and Connell. I'm sorry, to all the Connells of the world, to all the Connells of Ireland, I'm sorry, but it just has an ugly mouthfeel. I really hate saying the name. I apologize to all of you. If your name is Connell, no disrespect. It just feels wrong. It just feels wrong to say Connell. Maybe if I grew up with a friend named Connell, I could get behind it. I would understand it. It wouldn't feel wrong in the mouth. But 28 years in, I never had to say, hey, Connell, and it just feels like it's incorrect. Anyway, so we're following Marianne and Connell as we see them leaving their kind of high school-esque. I'm referring to it as high school. I don't think they call it high school, but they're leaving that. They're setting off on their journey into higher education to further themselves. They're both intelligent people. Connell's more along the lines of like, I don't want to say he's a jock. He's not really giving jock vibes, but he's your average boy, your average teenage boy who has a passion kind of for English, but he's like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, I don't know. It's giving very much that energy. And then you have Marianne, who comes from a more well-to-do family, who is still usually, I feel like the wealthy girl is kind of like in the in crowd, but here she is kind of I don't want to say excommunicated, but she's like a little bit weird. People view her as weird. She's a little bit aloof, so she is not in the in crowd, despite the fact that she comes from a more well-to-do family than Connell does. And so we see them as they engage in this relationship, and then we get to see Marianne on this like downward spiral. It almost feels like a Trading Places situation, where part of the book is Connell as his rise through his intellect, right? So he's able to go from being a more working class person to something like higher, like he's above his station in a way. It's almost like, again, like even that feels like generous at best, but we see him on the rise, but then you also get to see Marianne like falling from grace almost. Like it's a very prototypical story of like this wealthy girl from this, good family, but she winds up in a relationship that is abusive, and she's just like finding herself, but she's finding herself with people that are taking advantage of her. And so we are seeing Connell and Marianne circling each other over the years. I think it goes from like 2011 to 2014. So over the years, we get to see them on this journey together as they grow closer. And then somehow the closeness always ends in them pushing the other person away. And so even though they have feelings for each other and they care about the other person in a very intimate way, in a way that they don't care about other people in their lives, it still isn't enough to bind them together. And so we're seeing them coming together and going apart and coming together and going apart. And it's a very simple story, and it's a story that was, again, very easy to get through. It's very digestible on the audiobook. I don't know if this is the book that Sally Rooney has written that doesn't have quotation marks, or if that's Conversations with Friends. One of her books doesn't have quotation marks, which I feel lends itself to the pretentious nature of the book, at least physically, because on audio, this just felt like a very mundane contemporary fiction story that was, it felt like it could have been conceived as a novella that was kind of expanded upon into a physical book, because I think the book itself was under 300 pages. And so that lends itself, I think, to this ephemeral quality, because it doesn't stay long enough to kind of, I feel, stake out a position on anything. It just kind of exists, and then it ceases to exist. And in this case, I think that the existing was enough for the narrative. And so I would probably give it like 3.5 stars, just because I don't know. I went into this book expecting it to be about these people and their physical relationship. I don't know if that's because I had heard talks about the adaptation that was sexually charged, or if I had heard, the book was sexually charged, but I just knew that like sex and physical intimacy was a part of the story. And so for it to be as much of the story as it was, I wasn't necessarily surprised. But also, like, this isn't, 13 Chili Peppers. It's not that kind of spicy story. It was very, I would say it was very literary fiction in the approach to sex and their conversations around sex. Again, Marianne is a little cracked in the head. Like, there was this one part of this book that was always going to be with me about how it's in this part of the book where her and Connell are coming back together, and Connell's finding out that, Marianne likes to be like so rough during sex, and how she views herself as a submissive person. But like, in her mind, part of being submissive is allowing her partner to do things that she might have suggested but doesn't like. And so it's like Connell finding out that she's like low key in an abuse, not even low, like high key, very high key in an abusive relationship and being abused. And she's like not comfortable with that fact, but in her mind, again, like part of being submissive is allowing that to happen. And it was like a very weird part of the book. Not gonna lie, that entire sequence of events was just very weird to read about. And how the book ends is also, again, in this very weird space that, again, it just kind of exists. I don't know. I feel like other authors would dial into some of these moments and have more to say than I feel like Sally Rooney does. And what Sally Rooney does, I feel, is just exposes and allows a scene to happen, and then we just move on from that scene. And there's kind of an examination of that through the characters a little bit, but also not really. Like, her characters don't I would also not say that Connell and Marianne feel like the most well-rounded characters I've ever read. They don't really feel like the most in-depth people that I've seen written on the page. And so that also lends itself to this ephemeral quality because the characters feel very flat and flimsy and their setting feels kind of flat and flimsy, but the setting isn't really the point of the book. The point of the book is these two characters and their relationship to one another. And for most of the part, I feel like that dynamic between them was interesting enough to keep me going. But also having read Normal People, which I thought was going to be the one that was probably the most for me, um, it didn't really it didn't blow me away. Like the quality of the writing didn't do anything for me that was just like, ooh, mind blown. I can't believe you were able to do that, Miss Rooney. So overall, like it was fine. I am still going to read Conversations with Friends, and I don't know if I'm going to listen to that today though. Today, I think I'm going to focus on give myself a break from Sally Rooney, and we'll go back to her probably on Thursday, just so her books don't all bleed together for me. I would like to give myself a little bit of space so that when I do reflect on Sally Rooney, I'll be able to be like, yes, I did like Normal People because it was Normal People, and I either liked or didn't like Conversations with Friends. And I'll have, the two a little bit distinct in my mind. So today I'm going to listen to something else on audio that I have. I'll figure that out while I'm at work. But for now, that's all I have for you. Let me know down below if you've read Normal People. I feel like you have because it was a pretty popular book back in the day, and still today, everyone is still discovering Miss Rooney, or checking her out. Maybe discovering is the wrong word, but they're dipping their toe in to see, like I am, if they are a Sally Rooney girly. But I'm gonna go. Thanks for being here. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and until next time.